welcome back to another episode of Into the Hemaverse, your podcast for everything going on in the Hemaverse. I'm, of course, Colin Renberg, and I'm here with my co-hosts, David Rao
Hey.
and Nathan Graperis.
Hey.
Hey, guys. How's it going this week?
Good. We're finally, I think, actually at the point where we're right about to open. We're discussing possibly opening, I think, next week. So that's pretty cool. So we'll see.
I am super excited. I'm not gonna lie. Super excited.
Yep.
Nathan?
We might end up closing. I don't know. Texas is not doing great. Life is kind of who knows what's gonna happen next. But
yeah, I heard it was like up and down, and
it's insane.
Yeah.
My hope is that the governor will do something about it, but not like force another total lockdown. Maybe something in between, because balance is usually the best. So like maybe we'll have to limit class sizes or something like that. We can't have complete free reign to do whatever we want, but not have to just cancel practice entirely again. Other than that, as you can tell, I'm sitting outside in my front yard because my house is being worked on and it's loud and there's nowhere to sit, and so I moved my office chair into the front yard.
Hey, for being on a cell phone, it's actually not that bad. Like I'm kind of impressed. Yeah. Actually, it's funny that you say that. I just saw, I think it was on HEMA Alliance. It was not even like 2 days ago that apparently Absolute Fencing now makes a mask with a carbon filter that goes in under your. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And probably going to be required, honestly, if we end up having any tournaments in the next 10 months, I'm going to guess that they're going to be required.
Yeah, so there's that one, and then Leon Paul is also making an insert for your mask that like sits in the front of the bottom half of your mesh.
Oh,
so
interesting. So it's not like tight to your mouth, but it's just kind of.
It's fairly close, but it's kind of like just covering, so you're not just breathing out on people.
Well, it's kind of close if you're assuming everybody's wearing the correct sizing mask.
That's true.
Size mask, which is unfortunately not always the case. As I myself am a offender as well. I got a medium mask, and I should have had a small for a long time. So let's do some news. I will keep on rolling with what we have been talking about. So first up would be Devon Boorman's Academie Duello GoFundMe, which is still going on. Again, a great cause, a great guy, friend to all three of us. He does great work. He's been putting out tons of content, and any donation that goes to the GoFundMe, almost any donation, usually comes with an online class or some other content, like some HEMA learning or something like that. So it's really a good cause. Please help him keep his school open. It's one of the bigger schools, and I think they have their own space, which is a problem currently. So please help him out if you are able. The Sacramento Destreza series, I am behind by 2 lectures now, which is not great. But tomorrow, Thursday, will be another lecture, which will come up on Friday on YouTube. I'll leave the link in the description. I don't actually know who is lecturing this week, but I really enjoyed the series. If you are a rapier practitioner looking for something different, Destreza is definitely different, but it's a very cool style. And if you are at all interested, I would definitely recommend this series. Finally, the big update this week is Swords Without Borders is starting to release all of its prizes. Swords Without Borders is a raffle fundraiser that will support Doctors Without Borders, which, as you might imagine, are having a pretty difficult time right now. But Bill Grandy decided that he wanted to run this fundraiser event to support Doctors Without Borders. It will be held, I believe it is a contest running July 1st to July 30th for submissions. You basically buy raffle tickets and then produce a video on YouTube to increase your tickets. I think it's 5 tickets for a video, and then Whichever video gets the most likes will get an additional 5 entrances and entrances to the raffle. But I mean,
Can you make multiple videos?
You can make multiple videos, but you only get the 5 extra credit. You can't like make 6 videos and get 5 extra raffle tickets for each video. It would be no, it's literally like if you produce videos, you get 5 tickets, and then whichever of your 15 videos you produce gets the most likes will then win another 5 tickets to the raffle. But I mean, the prizes are outstanding. So we already talked about the cadet jacket. I did remember the name this time. But the other prizes include books from Freelance Academy Press, which are, I believe it's their Flower of Battle series versions, volumes 1 and 3, which are fantastic. They're beautiful. There's a leather belt from Handmade Revolution, which looks fantastic. One of the big ticket prizes, a Jesse Belsky stage swords side sword, which all of us have used at some point in a sword and buckler tournament. David has. Wait, did you use yours most recently?
Yep.
Yeah. So
it is the last like 4 or 5 tournaments.
I would say it's like a multi. It is now a multi-medal award-winning sword. I even got a medal with this sword. It's that easy. But no, the sword is fantastic. It's basically the best side sword on the market. I have one right up there with the buckler behind it. It's gorgeous. Even if you don't intend to use it, it's still a great prize. The other prize that just got released today, like 3 hours ago, which is amazing, is one from Davis Reproductions. That's Josh Davis. He does all of Bill's armor. Is donating the prizes of a $300 gift card for current or new orders for armor. I don't know if anybody else wants armor, but man, that's $300 off is a good deal. He's also donating. Let me see if I can find it so I don't butcher this name. I'm gonna butcher it anyway. It's a Barenware knife, which is the peasant's knife.
Yeah, it literally means a peasant weapon.
Yeah, it literally means peasant weapon, but everybody used them at some point. But it's really beautiful. I mean, I'll put up pictures obviously so you can see it home. But it's beautiful. It comes with a handmade leather scabbard, an eating knife, and I think a little utility tool that also fits in. I'm not 100% sure, but it is absolutely gorgeous. You should definitely.
Where is that from? The Balangare?
That is from Davis Reproductions, the guy that did not all of, but most of Bill Grandy's armor. He does swords and other reproductions as well.
All of his stuff is incredible.
Yeah, like historically perfect. I think he even uses a lot of historical practices when he actually makes this armor. So really, really cool. All right, I think that does it for the news. Today we have a guest that is in the waiting room, waiting for us to bring him in. It is Keith Cotter Riley. Keith is here to talk to us today about generally tournament organization. I am obviously the only one that doesn't do tournament organization out of the 3 of us. So I imagine that this will be a very interesting discussion for me, and you guys will be enjoying the commiseration of tournament organization. But yeah, so let me introduce Keith. He is a truly mixed martial artist, multiple belts in Eastern traditions of martial arts. Keith is now the head of the Atlantic Historical Fencing Academy, which is Atlanta Fry Factor. He teaches and trains HEMA. With this week's topic of tournament organization, Keith and his school co-host the Southeast Renaissance Fencing Open, which is SURFO, every year in November with the Decatur School of Arms. Keith serves as both the organizer and the director of the event. Let's bring him in. All right. Welcome, Keith, to the program. How you doing?
Good, good. Can't complain. Just plugging away like
Yeah.
always.
Are you holding up well
Rest of
during the plague?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really affect me too much. I work from home, so my life's just continue like normal. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah.
All right.
See my wife more often.
That's great because and you have a very young child, so obviously
Yeah.
more time at home is always good. I'm
Yep.
in that boat too. Cool. So you're here to talk to us about tournament organization. So tell us a little bit about your experience with HEMA. I gave you an introduction already, but tell us about your experience with HEMA tournaments and how you got started with Surfo.
Okay, that's a lot. The experience with HEMA probably started about 10 years or so ago. I can never remember these days. Um, uh, I did a little bit of reenactment when I lived in Ireland for a bit, and then I moved to Japan, and that just fell apart. And a while back, I was just like looking on YouTube. I think it was Swordfish I saw. Must have been like 2010 Swordfish or something like that. And I went, oh, this is cool. This is still a thing, and looked it up. And Marcus Lewis was working at the gym I was working at the time. I've known him since before then. We were like, this is cool. Let's try to figure this out. And then just basically went from there.
Nice.
And then with Surfo, that started 2013, 2014.
Oh.
David Koblenz, myself, we can never remember exactly which year it started in. I mean, David can tell you every year we're like, so this year is our 5th or 6th edition. But yeah, it's basically David Koblenz is the other well-known instructor in Atlanta, shall we say. He does rapier and classical fencing. And we both wanted to do something in Atlanta, so we just, put our heads together and came up with Surfo. And we deliberately decided to focus more on not longsword, even though longsword is what Surfo is sort of known for, because we attract a lot of really good people for that. But we have 3 rapier tournaments, sword and buckler, and then technically we have like 3 longsword tournaments, but uh, I don't really. It's really all one thing, sort of, broken apart, shall we say.
What are the 3 tournaments? Just curious.
For longsword, it's just the open. We do a women's, we do a youth.
Oh, okay.
But there's so much overlap that, like, I mean, most of our women also do the open. Not all of them, but most of them do. So yeah, like we try to emphasize more the rapier, the sword and buckler than we do the longsword at Surfo, just because longsword gets so much love anyway. It's doesn't need more love.
Hey, I'm a rapier and sword and
Thing
buckler
that's
guy. You don't have to you don't have to
yeah,
convince me. It's great.
yeah. And then the last part, or the second part of your question, but the last part, tournament wise, um, I've been involved with running different martial art tournaments for over 20 years. I started off with karate, and the organization I was in Ireland. I helped run their local and then a few of their nationals. I was a certified BJJ referee for a long time, and then obviously, um, once I started going to events, I think my first big event was Long Point 2012. I went to, and I made the mistake of becoming friends with Evil Ben and with Ben Michaels, and them roping me into helping out from there. And then I've just every event I go to, I end up being roped into doing something. So yeah,
Cool.
except for Purple Heart, which I've deliberately not, because you all ask for volunteers, and I just go, nope, I want to do something not tournament twice for a while. Just want to.
We will volunteer you. We'll volunteer
You
you.
guys.
We won't let you volunteer. You'll be
Yeah,
voluntold.
yeah. Actually, no, that's right. Natasha did tell me 1 year to become a judge.
That's
Um,
what I
yeah.
always I tell people. You know, I have, since I run, you know, my own tournament, and whenever someone asks me, "Oh, do you want to referee, or do you want to help with this?" No, I really don't. I just want to fence.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so next question. So how do you approach? And this is still just for Keith. We do have discussion questions for all three of you tournament organizers in a minute. But just for Keith, how do you approach Surfo's organization every year? What's your like main goals and how do you achieve them?
For the longest time, our main goal was having a venue. I mean, as you can imagine, Atlanta's not cheap.
Yeah.
So until 3 Surfos ago, every year we had a different venue. And then we managed to get one venue for 2 years. And last year we ended up at Kennesaw State University Campus Marietta.
I actually really liked that one. It was
It was a great venue.
looking, so.
Yes, so that's probably where we're going to try to stay. I was actually just about to put down a hunk of money before COVID hit to get it again for this year, and I'm glad I didn't, because God only knows what's going to happen. But that's honestly been the biggest concern of ours. Surfo is very minimalistically run. David and I break up the rules segments of it. And after the first year or so, we essentially already had our rules set, what we want to see and what we like. We do minor adjustments, but there's no need every year to just make brand new rule sets. It doesn't make a difference. So that's easy. Between David's background, doing some classical fencing and stuff like that, and then my background, especially with BJJ over here in the States, I already know everything I need to know, like who to ask to be first aid, how to set up the rings, how to do all that stuff. So after the first big year, which would have been our third year, I mean, I just roll. There's no really major issues. Like seriously, Surf was run by 2 people. Yeah, we don't have any big committees or anything like that because it's just not needed for us. I mean,
so it's not so much like the day after the tournament, like that Monday after the tournament's over. It's not like, okay, let's start, prepping for Surfo next year. It's more.
There's no need. Yeah. I mean, because we already have, right? We know who we're going to ask to do X, Y, and Z. I already know who my table staff's going to be. Already know who my head judges are going to be. Just because we've been lucky in that we have a lot of repeat people coming back who are willing to help with us. So yeah, we view it as very minimalistic. It's really easy for us to run. We can auto it so much. And it's just because of our backgrounds. I think it helps that we've been doing this stuff for years and years.
Gotcha.
You get to a point where it's easy. Yeah.
Cool. Well, the next question I had was, how do you and David marry? And maybe this is more of a rules question, which I wanted to save for later. But specifically, we have HEMA, we have SCA. Your tournament specifically draws a pretty big SCA crowd, and I think that's probably due to the Decatur School of Arms and David himself. Not that one, but he but he obviously, there's a big rapier culture there, and how do you marry the SCA with the HEMA? How do you, or I guess I should say, how did you and how do you continue?
We did by just saying, hey, this is an event, come. Right. I think
Magic.
one of the things we do is magic. Yeah. One of the things we do is we are one of the cheapest events out
Mhm.
there. We deliberately keep ourselves pretty cheap. We run so close to the red every year. And that helps attract SCA people. SCA events, I mean, some of the more expensive ones are like $20,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
They are really cheap. It helps that at least down in the southeast, the two major kingdoms down here, Merides, and I'm forgetting the other kingdom for the SCA,
Mhm.
they already have a strong tournament culture, shall we say? And there's a lot of overlap between HEMA and SCA in there
Hmm.
already. So it was pretty easy for us to attract some of the people in to begin with. Um, it also helps that we're so rapier
Mhm.
heavy and so sword and buckler heavy. Um, that that appeals to it, and some of the rule sets that David has made is a draw for SCA because it feels familiar. Honestly, like I do SCA, I do HEMA. I think the dichotomy is one that we're making up and one that doesn't really exist as far as the competition
Mhm.
goes. Um, as everything else aside, so the culture stuff is
Mhm.
different. But as far as competition itself, it's go out and
Mhm.
fence. At the end of the day, it's just go out and fence.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I generally agree with you, but there are some people who will say like, well, SCA wants more of this and HEMA wants more of this, but I like it. It's a simple solution. You put the tournament out there and you say, hey, come, and you keep it reasonably inexpensive. I like it. It's a
yeah,
simple but straightforward answer. I like it.
yeah. Yeah, just to go back to your point, like to the people who say SCA has different goals and HEMA has different
Mhm.
goals, uh, so what?
Yeah.
Right? It's just fence. Like if you're going to a tournament to fence, just fence. Like if you have different club culture goals that you want out of your fencing when you compete, the rules don't matter. If as long as you're fencing that's true to what you want to see, that's all that matters. And there's nothing in the SCA and there's nothing in HEMA that prevents either side from being able to do that. Yeah, it's a bit of an artificial dichotomy to me, I think, at times when it comes to just the competition side of
Yeah.
things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you, I mean, whenever people make that statement, it's like, well, what are you talking about when you say HEMA, right?
Yeah,
Because there's so many different ways that people do HEMA. There's so many different tournament rule sets or styles of approach to it. So to make that big distinction, it just like I agree with you. I think it really is it's a dichotomy that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's borne out in the tournaments like Surfo or like Lord Baltimore's Challenge, which is local here, where they're just like, hey, let's all fence together. We all like kind of the same things here. Let's do it. And I really like the camaraderie and the like, hey, we're in this together rather than, well, you hit too hard and you hit too soft and that kind of garbage, which I recently joined the SCA and now I'm like, this is great. I love it. I'm a big rapier guy anyway, and now I'm like, yay, I get to learn from people who do this exclusively, which is great. So I had a bunch of
have fun.
questions for just general tournament organization, what's going to go for all three of you to discuss, and me
No.
to listen like the idiot I am. The first talking point that I really wanted to touch on is that we all talk about, well, not me, talk about the stress level of deadlines and tournament organization. What kind of stress levels do you guys generally see, and how do you deal with those?
Who
When's-
wants to go first?
David, go first.
Oh God. So I mean, stress is it's a real thing for tournament organizers, but I will say this, that each year that we've run Capital Clash, in some ways the stress has gotten worse because it's a bigger event, but in most ways it's actually gotten less because we've gotten better and better at doing what we're doing, knowing what we're doing, knowing that we have the people in place to do that. So it's more like there's more to think about because there's more going on, but the stress is actually less, I think, because like I said, I just much more comfortable in what we're doing and confident in the people that we have in place. That being said, it's definitely a stressful thing to run a tournament. Even when everything is running fine, you have people asking questions. Like there could be have no problems going on, right? But you have people coming up to you and asking you questions, or there's there's something happening over here. There's so many things to focus on that it can definitely be really draining.
Who's next?
Yeah, I was. It's the same. Like, I am normally pretty chill going into anything I do. Just because that's my personality more than anything. But I help alleviate any stress I might have just by having extensive lists made and just ticking off everything. And I actually like to prep everything I can the week before. I want to have nothing to do the week of a tournament outside make pools. And obviously setting up, the rings and whatnot, but that's another story. But as far as paperwork goes, as far as having supplies, I get that done sort of like buying my Christmas presents, right? I get it done way in advance so that I don't have to worry about that. So then the real stress is like the event space calls me up and says, "Oh, sorry, we don't have this," or we need that. That then doesn't cause an avalanche effect. It's everything that's known is done, and then the unknown you can deal with in a much more calm fashion because you're not worrying about printing 200 waivers the night before. And that's lessons learned, right? That's lessons learned from doing the karate tournaments way back when. But yeah, like these days I'm pretty chill. It's the only thing I wish that I could have at Surfo, and I'm trying to get is me not being a director. So I can just sit down at a desk and have the things like David like saying is, somebody coming up with a stupid random question that's really important to them, that I can answer it for them and not worry about directing, 10 matches for the next hour at the same time.
Yeah, I've made that like a requirement. Like I don't direct at Capital Clash unless there's truly an emergency and there's no one else. Because like I can't be in charge of everyone else and direct at the same time. So and that definitely, because the first couple of years I was trying to do both, and that will just drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess let me think here. I've been probably for 9 years. I've been involved in running in some capacity in helping organize or run the event in Houston. That's I think had like 3 different names at this point over the last 9-10 years.
What's the next one?
The next name? I have no idea.
Yeah. Oh.
Who knows? It's just really like we at Christmas time we throw a bunch of random letters into a hat, and then we just pull them out at random, and then that becomes the new acronym, and then we find words that fit what the acronym is.
Nathan. FOVID.
COVID 2021. Oh man. But so I've been involved in running in some capacity, even as just like a head judge or something like that for a long time. And it's very true what David was saying, that like every year that you run it, it gets easier and easier. It's never easy, but it becomes less stressful and less stressful because there's a lot of different things that can go wrong. But the majority of them, after running an event for 9 years or being involved in and seeing an event run for 9 years, you kind of be able to anticipate a lot of the different problems that might happen, other than, like some really, really random off the cuff thing, like a chandelier falling on a fence or something like that. But I think that's experience is obviously a very, very big help, because I think Keith had mentioned that as well. And the other big thing is being fluid and adaptable, and not letting the stress get to you and like throw you into a place where you can't function or you freeze. Just being able to take the punches as they come, relax, breathe with it, and try your best to sort out the situation. And I will say also that in the last 2 years, I think it was, Madison Lancaster has been a huge help for me running events. Like she is a co-organizer, but probably does more than I do. And I just come up with ideas for instructors and make sure that they submit their stuff on time. And I'm there the day of to help with things that might go wrong. But she's really, really, really helped take the burden of stress and divide it by 2 or more. So she rocks too. So find yourself a Madison Lancaster, essentially.
That always helps.
So
one thing I was going to add to the stress thing is like stress during the weekend is in Tehima especially, there's this temptation that events are party centrals, right? Like everyone comes together and you just have a great time. You stay up till no. If you're the tournament organizer, go home, right? Surfo, people don't see me. I'm there in the morning before we open. I shut down and then I go home, because if I see everybody, I'm going to be up until like 2 a.m. I'm going to be anyway, because I always have people staying at my house. But at least it's in my house, it's comfortable, and I can de-stress from whatever happened that day, and be know I can set my time when to get to bed, know I can set my time when to get up and get out. Because if you don't, the first year is going to be cool, because it's probably going to be small, and it's like, oh, I'm out with 20 people. By year 4 or 5, you could have 60, 70 people who want to go out with you. That's stress in and of itself. That's a different and added stress you don't need to do to yourself.
Yeah, because people are like, oh, where are we going to go eat? Oh, you got to go now plan where we're going to go eat because of this random impromptu gathering.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think people don't really underestimate how stressful those sorts of things are. The things that have like nothing to do really with the tournament, but just the social aspect of it can be in some ways even more stressful, because they're like, oh, I have to find a restaurant for 70 people.
Yeah.
In 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like from year 1, we've told people at Surfo, like, we don't book hotels, we don't book restaurants. We are organizing a tournament and workshops. That's it. Anything's fun, social afterwards. You all are adults. Talk among yourselves. I'm going home. I have a puppy who needs to go out, and I need sleep.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn.
Last year at Surfo VAF, we brought 11 people? 10, 11 people. And we got an Airbnb that was literally 10 minutes or less from the venue. And it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, I think team houses are really the way to go, just generally for traveling to tournaments, because every night you come home, you're all like, you come all into the same house, you're all tired, you all put on some terrible YouTube video that somebody recommended or whatever, and you just sit back like, God, and then you all pass out in the middle of the living room or whatever. But yeah, no, that was a great experience, actually. I highly recommend. Well, as long as Airbnb exists in the post.
That's true.
Hotels work just as fine.
Yeah, that's true. And we did that when we went to the Arnold. We got a hotel room and packed in, and it was kind of the same experience. Yeah. All right. So, before we move on to the next question, I got to throw gasoline on the fire, because all 3 of you, I think, actually, I'm not sure about Keith, but I know at least that David and Nathan do this. Fighting at your own tournament or competing at your own tournament. Gasoline on the fire?
It's
not that bad.
It's not.
I was gonna say it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. What matters is how you do it. Like, Madison last year and the year before, she asked me, she was like, "Hey, I can run the longsword, like the longsword event itself, if you want to go compete." Like, you have to have somebody on hand who is able to faithfully recreate how you would run it and knows the same things that you know, because that lets you do it, right? Like I would be very opposed to the idea of both competing in a tournament and trying to run it, because I feel like that's just like generally inappropriate and not something that you should do. You shouldn't be
Right.
involved in saying, okay, well, that hit was a double hit, or okay, well, remember, judges, this is what you got to call. Like, you have to be able to be hands off, and if you can't do that, then I think you should not be competing in your own event. But if you can, I don't see anything wrong with it, because it's not really, you're not really doing anything wrong. There's no conflict of interest. There's not really extra added stress because somebody else is dealing with it while you're competing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seems to make sense.
Yeah. I tend not to, just because it's too much energy that I'm going to expend when I have everything else to deal with. But yeah, I mean, to Nathan's point, as long as it's obvious that you're not in charge of whatever that event is, it doesn't matter. Like at Surfo, David normally tries to do the Franco-Belgium tournament, I believe. But that's known as a throwaway. It's a fun, highly technical rapier tournament that is impossible for somebody to bias towards the whoever's an organizer or something, right? And yeah, it's my experience as well is, like, if you're running an event and then you compete in one of the tournaments in your event, nobody's going to be able to accuse you of bias for you, because most times you don't do that well because you're tired, you're stressed about other stuff. Like, I know people who do it to de-stress. They just get the fence and have fun and not worry about dealing with 100 people. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I agree with everything. Like, as long as you have people in place that can do, like, if you as the organizer, like, as long as you have people that can do what you do while you're not doing it, then you're fine. The first few years of doing Capital Clash, I did not do any competing, and then the last 2 years I have competed. 2 years ago, I tried to do multiple events, and then this last year I only did Sword and Buckler, because I definitely like, I wanted to do, so I just let me see if I can run the event and do have as much fun fencing as possible. But you can do it, but there's so many other events I can go to and fence at. So if I really want to focus on my event, making it the best possible event, and that probably means that I shouldn't be just fencing. I should be running it and making sure that I can do whatever I can to make it as awesome as possible.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. So I will apologize in advance, because I actually changed the order of the questions last minute. But actually, I want to start to talk about how tournaments get started, because I think that a lot of the people that would be watching this podcast are going to sit down and say, well, maybe they'll talk about how to get a tournament started, because I really want to start a tournament and I have no idea where to start. So let's talk about it. Let's say I am let's say an owner of a head instructor of a school that doesn't have a tournament but would like to have one, and would like, to kind of grow it, obviously, into a reasonable sized tournament. But, like, how do I get started? How do I start from literally level 0?
Well, first of all, don't. No, but
Beautiful.
That's a good question. I think the biggest mistake that people make probably is trying to reinvent the wheel every time they create like I'm gonna start a new tournament, and we're gonna do things completely different. So I think that's a big problem. So one, I think, is trying to familiarize yourself as much as possible with what everyone else is doing, and when I say everyone else, I don't just mean HEMA. I mean other sports and other things, like, because most other combat sports, and sports in general, have been around for much longer as competitive sports than HEMA, and they've figured out a lot of things that I still see HEMA tournaments struggling with, and it's like, guys, why we this has been figured out for 50 years. Like, this issue, why? So I think that's the number one thing I would say, is first just trying to familiarize yourself as much as possible, and then the other one thing is, the best way to do it is to start in-house. Just start running little in-house tournaments to learn how to make it work before you try to branch out and bring in more people. Or if you have other local clubs, maybe you can have small little mini events. That's the best way, because trying to start big is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Like, people forget, like, Long Point started from was the Mid-Atlantic Gathering, right? Which was
what was it? Yes.
Mid-Atlantic something, but it was like literally CKDF, VAF, MEMAG. I think that was it who went to it.
Mashes.
Mashes,
And
yes. Yeah, but it was like 4 clubs in what, a 30-mile radius of each other, like.
Yeah, and it was like 20 people.
Yeah, like, that was the start of Long Point, right? Swordfish is similarly small. Like, it was I think Malmo and Gothenburg decided to put something together in Malmo for the very first Swordfish, and like, I think Stockholm showed up as well. To bounce off of David's idea of, like, just having local clubs come together, you can always just have open nights where you invite other clubs to come in and just have a few, like, have mini game tournaments, shall we say, right? Like, we're going to take this first hour, we're going to do this rule set, we're just going to treat it as a tournament and just get experience of doing that. Another thing people often don't do is reach out, right? Reach out to other clubs. A lot of people in HEMA do other martial arts. Talk to your instructor in the other martial art. Again, bouncing off what David said, but it's like, I know a lot of guys who do BJJ. BJJ have tournaments every weekend, every single weekend. Ask your coach. I guarantee you he's helped run a tournament or be a head ref. And be like, what do you do? And that, I mean, the background of running a tournament really doesn't change from sport to sport, outside of the minutia, of, like, I'm doing a volleyball tournament, I need to make sure I got volleyballs. But, organizing first aid, organizing waivers, organizing venues, that's all the same in every sport out there. But the big one, trying to be number one is the wrong way to look at running a tournament. I've seen it a few times in every country, right? You got some new club come out and be like, we're going to be the biggest tournament, we're going to have the best fencers, it's like, relax. That will occur. But for your first tournament, just there's a field and invite your 20 best friends and make mistakes. Like, Surfo was 25 people the first year. This past year we had 130 registered to compete. I think about 125 showed up. And if that had happened the first year, it would have been an absolute just terrible idea. And that's what my experience and David's experience. Like, we don't run late. Surfo won with less than 30 people and late in both days, right? And now, imagine that being your first tournament with no experience and like 50 people show up. You're going to run late and you won't know why.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Mhm.
And oftentimes there are things you have no control over. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the Wi-Fi just went out, and now the computer that needs to update to produce the the elimination round is not working. So now we're just sitting around and waiting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, like so many people don't know how to read the paper pool lists, right? Like David, I'm sure you're used to reading the USFA
yeah,
list, right? We have them at Surfo, and I teach all of my table staff how to use it. It's really simple, but people won't even think to print those because we had an issue at our past Surfo where we normally use HEMA CM and it crashed for us for whatever reason. And thankfully, Sean Franklin was there, and we were able to transfer some stuff to HEMA Scorecard. And the only issue we had was really doing some elim stuff. It just took like 10 minutes longer than it normally does. But we were able to run 2 tables off of paper because we had the experience to know you need to know how to do this, right? And yeah, so basically be modest.
yeah.
Just start small and you'll get there. If you're ambitious and you want 350 people showing up and having fencers from all over the world, cool. That's not for your first year.
Yeah, and also you may think you want that.
Yeah.
I mean that's what happened to Long Point, right? I mean, they thought that's what they wanted, and then they realized when they got there, this is not really, because
Yeah.
it's I mean, events of that size are just
Unwieldy.
yeah. I mean, it's it is literally pretty much a full-time job. Like, you were going to be
Mhm.
working on that the entire year for an event like that size.
Yeah.
Especially working with the hotel and things like that. Like, it's crazy.
I have
Yeah.
to admit, I joined too late to be involved in any long points.
That's fine.
So I have no frame of reference of how big Long Point is. Only that a lot of people have said like it was a huge tournament, especially at the end.
So let's put it this way, okay? So 2012, I think, no, 2011 was
2011, the first.
the Long Point,
This is
right?
the first Long Point, yeah. The first
Yeah.
time it was
So
called Long Point, yeah.
Long Point. So the Mid-Atlantic was like 20 odd people. Long Point 1 was 50. Long Point 2 was 90. Long Point 3 was 160. I noticed because I was an organizer with the Rapier side. Long Point 4 onwards was always over 200 people. Long Point 17, I believe we had just under 400 competitors.
Yeah.
There
Oh
was
my
like
god!
yeah. Actually, no, it might have been just over 3. It's like between 300 400 competitors.
And I think
Hang on,
if you included just
unique competitors.
yes.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's insane.
yeah. So there was over 400 people there, including add-ons and including vendors and stuff like that. And so that was pretty much a exponential growth rate for them. And there's reasons why that happened, that other clubs or other tournaments just won't replicate. But that's a whole nother day on lecture and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really easy to see why the 4 main people, or actually 5 or 6 main people involved with Long Point when we don't want to do this. They really only ever wanted about 200 people, and it was people from clubs they knew and stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's a really valid way to hold a tournament. Is I know these people, I know they also agree with my views on how fencing should be, whatnot. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's sort of what 2019, the last one for now, sort of ended up being, and it was a blast. I had a great time there. I personally had a great time at the really big one as well, but I also come from BJJ where you can have a tournament with like 1,000 people, and so my expectations were slightly different than some other people who went to the tournament for the first time and whatnot.
And that's something. So like I loved Long Point 2017, even though I
Yeah.
didn't do great in it, because I love competing, right? I love tournaments. I love
Yeah.
competing, and most people in HEMA, people who are competitors, don't really understand what tournament competition is like in it, because a lot of people in HEMA have never done any competitive sport before, and they just don't understand the intensity and the emotion and the level of just work that people are going to put into it that are serious about it. And I think a lot of people I know a lot of people were really turned off by that at Long Point 2017, and to me I was like, oh, I actually like that intensity. I like that environment, and I don't want that to be only what HEMA is at all.
No.
But I do like that, so I want there to be a place for that. And at the Capital Clash, we treat it more as a more serious, competitive focused events. So I kind of like that kind of thing, but I also like just being able to chill and relax. So I would say that's something as an organizer, you need to figure out what you want to do. Do you want to do? Are we going to do a like, what degree of kind of I know degree is not the right word, but what type of tournament, right? What is our goal? What are we looking for?
Is it like a low key get some friends together and fight, or is it going to be this gold medal is sought after on the entire East Coast, right? I can see that. Like that's a really important. I guess that's one of those things. I think that we were talking about it earlier, but I probably mentioned I'm very a very big fan of setting goals for like literally everything. Like set a goal for your tournament. I want this tournament to not necessarily be big, but I want it to be well respected, or I want this tournament to be the most fun tournament that it could be, right? So like that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And often that will organically happen for the organizer, and it may even organically happen for the event, right? So depending on who shows up to the events may ultimately decide the feel for the event. So certain clubs won't go to certain events, and it's not that they're making judgment calls on the event itself. It's just it might be too far away, it might not be a good time, it might be another event they prefer or whatever, right? And so because of those clusterings that can happen, organically an event may end up being more one than the other, no matter what the organizer wants. And so you, Dennis, organizer, as you were saying, needs to put it forward. Hey, this is what I want from my event. Now, everybody here is rah, 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 going hard, whatever. It's like, cool. We will facilitate this for you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if anybody gets hurt, that's going to make me, by hurt, I mean like, even like a bruise boo boo. That's going to make me not want to do this, which is again perfectly fine. A lot of SCA fighting is like that, right? And then you got other people who are like, I just want to see Swordfish 2016, which I think was one of the best ones that was ever there. Was that the year I think Anders won?
Yeah.
That was, that's really intense. Like I think Nathan was there, and I think Nathan, you got to the semis 2016, right?
I don't
Swordfish?
remember.
You did really well, however you did. Was it
Yeah, I don't.
quarterfinals? Yeah,
I don't remember what year that was. Are you
yeah,
talking about the year that I got fourth, losing to Dennis?
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. 2016
Yeah,
sounds right.
yeah, because like that was the year there was a lot of Poles, a lot of French, a good amount of good Americans were there, and it was really intense, and that appeals to me, but I can totally see it not appealing to others. And but Swordfish was always upfront. This is what we want. You see some tournaments that sort of wish wash on what they want, and then afterwards they go, "Oh, we didn't want that." It's like it's too late to say afterwards. You be upfront. Is it Klopfectors? They run a tournament in Pennsylvania, and they're pretty upfront, saying, "Hey, this is fun. We're just here to have a good time. We're all friends. We're probably going to get drunk tonight. So if there's any ill will, don't come here, right? Just come to expect to have fun."
Yeah, and that's like when it comes to tournaments, if you're going to take yourself like as the more serious you take the tournament fencing and more competitive you treat it, the less friends you're gonna have.
Yeah.
You are going to lose friendships or realize that, oh, this person wasn't actually my friend. That definitely happened, and that was, I think, a lot of what happened in 2017 was people realizing that, oh, you know, uh, maybe we're not all as big friends as we thought we were.
Yeah.
But I mean that's true for I mean for anything. That's not a HEMA related thing. That's the way life works.
Yeah, when the chips are down, it's like maybe
Yeah.
I'd rather beat you,
Yeah.
or maybe I'd rather not lose to you, or whichever. Yeah. Okay. So for that kind of carving your own, I guess, niche, or carving your own tournament culture, I guess. How much do rule sets play into that? I know
They
I
can and they
here's the
can't.
can of worms.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's in HEMA. I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on the rules dictating fencing behavior. The penalties can dictate fencing behavior, but the rules to score, yes and no, right?
I think statistically that's kind of borne out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the three, I don't know where it is on your screen, but on my screen, boom, boom, the three of us, like David, Nathan, myself, have gone to a lot of tournaments. We have fenced under a lot of rules. We still pretty much fence how we fence. Our attitudes are still our attitudes. And that's the same with all of the top 50, whatever you want to say, fencers in any weapon. The rules aren't really going to affect our mindset. We're too experienced for that. Penalties can affect mindsets. So, but then if you start to penalize stuff too much, like if you start to penalize normal behaviors that you see in other rule sets, then that will start not getting what you want. They'll actually make unhappy fencers. Now, penalizing stuff that's just common sense, like don't be a douche and hit somebody in the head with your pommel a dozen times. Yeah, black card, go away. We don't want you. That's makes common sense. But I've seen people trying to penalize stuff like was it? So there's a good and a bad, right? So in this rule set, we want both hands on the long sword at all time. You'll get penalized if you throw a Geistling. Cool. That makes sense. You put it up front. That makes sense. But if you say something like, if you go to half sword, you'll be penalized, which I've also seen. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? And that will not actually get what you want. That will just get frustrated fencers who like to use that tool and don't understand why it's not being allowed, because it really doesn't make sense. Like Purple Heart Open doesn't like one-handed thrusts, but you guys explained very well why you don't want to see it. And it's also not a very common thing you see anyway in the sources. So most people will just go, fine, whatever. It's not a big deal. Um, at the end of the day, if you want to affect stuff, it starts in the club. It doesn't start in the tournament. Club culture affects everything more really than a tournament can ever affect it. All we can do is penalize your club culture, I think, is how yeah.
And I think going along with what you were saying there, Keith, is that the rule set itself is far less important. Like it's completely insignificant to the application of it, and if the referees, judges, whatever, if they know the rules and they're applying the rules consistently, that's what matters, right? Because as a fencer, there is nothing more frustrating than, like, I may not like a rule set, but if it's being applied consistently, then I could, if I needed to, adjust my fencing to that rule set. But if it's if the calls are just all over the place, there's nothing more frustrating than that.
Yeah.
So really, when it comes to rules, I think the application and knowing the rules by heart as the organizers and as the referees, and then being consistent in application, and never, like, one thing I would say is never, don't make exceptions. If you have a rule, don't make exceptions to it. Just don't do it. Don't do it, because once you make an exception to your rule, you have to keep making exceptions to it. Otherwise, people are going to get upset. And if you say up front, this is the rule, this is how it is, this is what we're going to do, and then you're consistent about it, if people get upset at that, then I mean, they're just being a jerk, right?
Yeah. I mean, we see it in modern fencing, right? Like the rules. I love watching Saber, and like rules is written for Saber and rules is applied for Saber. It's not the same. Um, but everyone understands this, right? And it is very consistent. Rules is applied is very consistent, no matter where you are in the world. So it does. The fencers know it, and the referees know it, and the coaches know it. So everybody's okay with it. And exceptions were made, and the exceptions were carried on, and that's where we've ended up. And they really need to rewrite the rules, but they never will. But yeah, yeah.
All right. So I'm just gonna say that might be enough on rule sets for now, because I don't want to beat on that poor horse that may not yet be dead, but maybe we'll just leave that one alone.
Oh, you mean you don't want to ask what's the perfect rule set?
No, I don't think that we have enough time left to even scratch the surface of that one. However, if you want to set up another podcast later, which is just tournament rule sets, hey man, I'm all for it. I will have no good opinions, I promise you.
That should be like the drunken histories of HEMA.
Oh, actually, you know what?
Yeah.
That might be a really fun episode when David, Nathan, and I actually all get together in person one time, because we'll just have drinks and talk about rule sets, and then no one will listen. It'll be great. Cool. Let's move. Okay, so the next question, or what I was going to move to next is, all right, so I am my middle of nowhere, starting my new tournament. I think I have most of what I need kind of under control. I've got a rule set. I've got, 20 to 30 people who are consistently like having fun at my very, very tiny in-house events. I've invited some other clubs, and now I kind of want to put something on. How do I start to take that small thing and grow it into a bigger, like just more well known? What kind of things, what kind of marketing or what kind of expanding ideas should I incorporate into my quote unquote new tournament?
Market.
Oh,
Oh no.
One of the big things that always helps with events is like reach out to all the people that you know that are either in other clubs or run other clubs. Don't just make your event and say, all right, cool, we're good, that's it, right?
Mhm.
If I think every year, like I'm like, hey Keith, here's Purple Heart Open, and Keith hates me, so he never comes. But but every year, like scratch your head and remember, oh yeah, at Long Point that year I met that one guy who said he was from this club or whatever. I wonder if they want to come out, because you need to, like, that gets the word out there. People might see something pop up on their Facebook, or they might see the Hema Alliance thing, but like reaching out to everybody that you know who is in a different club or runs a different club, that's a big deal. And it's also way more personal than just, like, oh, well, I saw the ad for Nathan's event on Facebook, so I guess I'll go.
Yeah, I agree. Like every year when we have Surfo, I hit up all of the local clubs and I throw the advertising on their Facebook page. I also make sure to talk to instructors and just remind everybody that, hey, this is a thing. Honestly, HEMA is still so small, it's mostly word of mouth. If people had fun at your event, they will talk about it. If people didn't have fun at your event, they'll talk about it more. And if your small event is fun, people will go back to the clubs and be like, hey, we had so much fun at the Kentucky Open, y'all should come next year. And then, next year when the organizer hits up that club, be like, hey, we're doing it again, this is the dates, then you'll be like, oh yeah, we had fun, we told you had fun, more of you should come. That's normally I think in HEMA how stuff grows most organically. Spamming Facebook is the number one way not to have people come to your event, which is counterproductive or counterintuitive, but it's truthful. If you spam every single, like, I've seen clubs do or tournaments do this. If you spam like the 3 major HEMA Facebook pages 2 to 3 times a week talking about your event, people get tired of it and they won't go unless they already wanted to go.
Yeah,
it's
and Facebook advertising in general is a terrible way of advertising anyways, because unless even if you're paying money for it.
I was gonna say, even if you're paying money,
I mean, a few years ago it actually worked a lot better. It was a lot easier to advertise on Facebook. Now it's like, even when like for like the Capital Clash page, if I want to like post an update like on the page, I know most of the people aren't going to see it because it's not going to show up in their feed.
I remember last year Parika hit me up about something that he had put on the page and was like, hey, this is sort of pertaining to you. I'm like, what are you on about? Like, aren't you seeing our updates? And it's like, went back, I hadn't seen like the last 4 updates on your page because of the algorithms.
Maybe that should be a podcast, the love-hate relationship of HEMA and Facebook, because Facebook is so central to just HEMA connections, and it's just so terrible.
It's only terrible because they have made it terrible.
We should go to
MySpace would actually have been better because they didn't fuck with algorithms. It's
we'll get a lot of really weird people showing up to our events.
We don't already.
Yeah, but Tom will be our friends.
Tom will show up to everyone's event. I was gonna say the other option is the HEMA Live Journal.
Hey, don't forget about
Zenga.
What was the Google's attempt as Facebook again?
Oh man.
Google. Yeah.
Was it? Oh man, I don't even remember it. I
remember.
My brain is stuck on Google Meet, and it's never gonna go away.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh man. All right. So we're a little bit over our time, but I think we have time for one last question. The important one. We've already mentioned a few of them. I know I've caught at least 3, I think. So, but what I wanted to ask last was, what are the biggest mistakes that you can make and possibly have made when organizing a tournament? And I want each of you to at least give me one. So,
Who wants to go first again?
David.
No, I always go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I could give so many. Do all of the stuff you can do beforehand.
yeah.
Don't wait till the week of. Make sure you have first aid of some sort. I guys, I've been to some tournaments with like over 50 people. You need to have first aid
Mhm.
of some sort. I've been to huge tournaments where there's no emergency services, no first aid. I've seen some bad injuries, and people are just going, "What do we do?" Like the amount of times I've had to do concussion checks on people, I'm tired of it. Hire somebody. I'm tired of doing them. Do train up your table staff. Even if it's day off, they need to know what to do. Um, there's so many more things. I could just go rant. Who else wants to rant?
I mean, probably have a few things, but I would say the number one thing is simplify everything as much as possible. Rule sets, everything. Make the process as simple as possible. Don't try to make it as awesome as possible by doing all these really cool things that are going to be really cool, because the more things you add to it, the more complicated and the more that's going to kind of snowball when things go wrong. So especially at the beginning, start simple. Like just keep everything as simple as possible, and because if it's simple, it's much easier to do, and if you do it well, people will enjoy it and they're going to want to come back.
One of the biggest things I think, and I myself still have trouble with it, but is making sure that you delegate, because it can be easy. You know, if you're like the head organizer, or in my case, like one of two head organizers, um, for an event, it can be very easy to see, oh, there's a fire over there. You know, the ref water table needs more cups or something like that, and like that's not a big thing. That's not a big problem. But and it takes 2 minutes to go get them more cups so that they can go get more water. But you start doing that for every single thing, and all of a sudden you have no attention to focus on the things that actually matter. And even though it's not common, somebody gets a sword through their like through their jacket and stabs into their throat or something, and you're off getting cups for somebody, right? Delegate that stuff out to somebody who doesn't need to be on point for the important stuff, even though it's not a big deal. Like going and getting cups for water, like I said, that's not a big deal. It doesn't take that long, but you also don't need to do it. I was talking to Hans Heim last year, I guess, at PH, or the year before. I think it was last year.
He was there last
And he
year.
was telling me, yeah, and he was telling me. So he works in management for the German government, and he told me that, like, as part of his training, of like an upper level manager, is any like he was trained to say, anytime that a problem presented itself, to ask himself, do I need to actually be the one to solve this, or can somebody else do it instead? And it's not like oh, you're just lazy, which is that's where I have the problem with it, because like I want to, like, I'm a doer and I want to do this stuff, and I don't want to be like, oh, I'll just give that to somebody else, because that makes me feel like I'm just like making somebody else do some simple task, because I don't want to do it. But it's important to say, do I need to do it, or can someone else do it? Because if you don't need to do it, you could probably be better served doing something else.
Yeah, it's so easy as the organizer to just be like, oh, it's it's just easier for me to do it than to explain it to this person, so I'm just going to do it. And that is such a mistake, because then you end up doing that and I definitely did that for the first few years. And what I've told, like, when we have our kind of organization meetings before Capital Clash, is like, my goal as the tournament organizer is to sit over in the corner on that desk and do nothing right? Because
Yeah.
if that's happening, then everything is running the way it should be. Everyone else is doing their job. Then, as the head organizer, in charge of that, that means I'm doing my job correctly.
That also means that you did your job correctly leading up to the event as well.
Right.
Yeah. So that actually bounces back to another point that I see happen all the time in HEMA tournaments. There are too many top-heavy tournaments. Not everybody needs to have a title, right? So what I mean by that is, like, it's pretty clear at Surfo, it's David and my show. It's pretty clear at Purple Heart, that is Nathan and Melissa's. Madison, thank you. Madison show is pretty clear. Capital Clash, that is David et al.'s show, right? And that ultimately the buck stops at somebody. But I've been at other tournaments where I ask somebody, hey, you're meant to be the head person here. Here's an XYZ question. And they're like, oh, that's not my scene. That's that person's scene. Oh, no, that's that person's scene. No, it's the buck stops at somebody. It should be a benevolent dictatorship where you delegate, right? It's just going back to Nathan. It's not everybody's on the same level. Everybody, unless it's like a big club that's already got a committee type idea, and most US events aren't run like that, but there should be 1 or 2 or 3 people who have the umbrella overview look at what they want, and then they delegate it out, just like Nathan said. And that if this person makes a mistake, it's not on them, it's on one of you 3, right? Because what that means is, when like you were asking me at the beginning, Colin, like, when do you start planning? I noticed that people start planning sooner when there's more people. When there's more people who have to have a say. Make that as small as possible as to who actually has a real say, who gets to nix or approve stuff. That's not to say you can't have a lot of people helping you. Depending on the size of the event, you may need to have a lot of people helping you. But, I try to view stuff more like as if we're going to eventually have a con, right? A big Dragon Con or MomoCon like we have down here in Atlanta. And like at MomoCon, which we work every year, there's 2 people who ultimately their heads will roll, and there's like 40,000 people go to this event, right? And so HEMA events need to look at stuff this way. If you really want to grow, there needs to be essentially a board whose heads will roll, and everyone else is delegated out for their roles. And it will actually make it easier for you to be nimble and to grow, and for a tournament not to fall apart when the inevitable happens that somebody cannot help you this year.
Mhm.
Right?
That's
If
really
that
interesting.
makes sense.
Actually, so I work in software development, and that's like, it's not quite textbook agile, but it's close enough. And you guys probably don't know what that means, but I don't know if anybody who's in software development might be like, oh yeah, what you mean that.
Yeah. There's a lot of software people in HEMA.
There are actually a lot of software people in here, and apparently, Keith, you know a lot of federal employees and contractors.
I know way too many.
Well, I forget what that post was about specifically, but it was
the Zoom.
it was about
That was
Zoom,
the Zoom.
and
Yeah.
we're on it right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, unfortunately I would. It's the only thing that records separate audio. Like, just
I don't mind Zoom for this stuff.
yeah.
It's just I was reading. So way off topic. There was an SEC company, like, on one of the big, shareholding things, who had been caught with their board on Zoom talking about stock share stuff. That's an SEC violation.
I mean, yeah, they might as well have just posted it on Reddit. Like,
China has it. Yeah. Like, if I'm rich enough, I can probably go find somebody to hunt down that information, and I'll give them money for it.
Let's be honest. If you're rich enough, if you're even moderately rich enough to invest, you probably either own a software company or you're a you're an employee in a software company and you know how to
Yeah.
do it yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So
Wait, I can bring that back to Hema.
Oh,
and
yeah,
back
do it.
back.
Yes.
So on that note, when you were discussing like internal, especially organizational things, do not do that in the presence of people who are not part of the organization.
Yes.
No? You sure?
Oh.
that is a big mistake.
Especially when it's like when it's a serious thing. Just always do it in private.
There was like, I think it might have been Capital Clash last year or something. But there was a call, and I was speaking to the referee. It wasn't about my guys; it was another guys. Speaking to the two refs, and was like, "Hey, this call happened. Or be sure this is the rules, right? Because I think you weren't doing the rules." And they're like, "Okay." And then they go over to the table where all the fences are and start talking to themselves. And I just walk over and I move the two judges away. And it's like,
Yeah.
in private, guys, like, because if you mess up, they're going to let you know. And
Yep.
if, like, yeah. Always in private. Always.
All right. So, is there anything else that we want any other big mistakes before we close on? All right.
I
Well,
think so.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a legitimately great conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to hop onto your least favorite service and join us today.
I can think of worse. Don't worry. Thanks for having me, guys.
Tell us, tell the viewers where they can find you. I know your main club is fencingatl.com, I think, but is there anywhere else that we can find you? Or
I mean, yeah, Spec USA. I run hisfence.us. And yeah, fencingatl.com is my club's website. I'm also wildgeesefencing.com, but that's probably gonna be one down. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And let's see, this will be coming out on Friday, so join us next Friday for another episode. We run them every Friday, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Thank you, Colin.
Yep. Thanks
So
guys.
much.
See you next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Be good.